Good evening, everyone. It's good to be here, and thank you for inviting me as a church, and thank you for Pastor for the introduction. Just a slight correction, it's the Canadian Society for Exercise Physiology, not exotic physiology. So, sorry, my handwriting was a little bit bad, but so Canadian Society for Exercise Physiology, all right. So I hope that you've been learning a lot from Dr. Davis. Have you been learning a lot? Yes. Good. And I hope that you apply a lot of things that you learned. That's the most important thing. Well, today we have a short presentation, and then tomorrow I'll be with you for Sabbath. So I'll be definitely looking forward to that. So today, and by the way, if it's possible, we can save questions till the end. We'll have a little Q&A session, so that'll be okay too. All right, so today our topic is called gut feelings. We're going to talk about the gut and the gut microbiota. But before we start, okay, there you go. So before we start, some disclaimers. First of all, as you know, this presentation is only for educational purposes. Amen? So before applying any of these things, you have to speak with your healthcare provider. Also, I want to report that I do not have any conflicts of interest. I'm not here to sell you anything or anything like that. I'm not associated with any supplement companies, things like that. Just educational purposes. All right, gut feelings. Feeding your microbes to optimize your physical and your mental health. You know, oftentimes when we think about disease, we think about one disease is associated with one organ. Is this often true? So if someone says, I have a cold, what automatically do you think of? There's an issue with the lungs. We do this with many other diseases. We do this with eczema. If someone says, I have eczema, I have itchy skin, you automatically think that you have an issue with your skin. If I say atherosclerosis, what comes to your mind? What part of the body? Sorry? Not the bones, it's the heart, right? The vessels, they're clogging up. Right? How about type 2 diabetes? If I say type 2 diabetes, what part of the body comes to mind? The pancreas. That's right. And of course, depression, you think about the brain, and asthma, you think about the lungs. But what if I were to tell you that all these medical conditions had one of its origins or is influenced by your gut? Would you believe me? This is one of the things I want to kind of ingrain in you today, that diseases are often more holistic than you think. Most medical conditions today, there's multiple body parts that are affecting it. But in today's medical system, they only zone in they zone in very narrowly. And that's why often people do not get better. But we have to think about more holistically about these things. And I want to ingrain that in your mind through talking about the gut. What's happening in your stomach. And you will see that what happens in your stomach powerfully affects so many aspects of your health. It affects your mood. It affects, of course, your digestion, even your heart, and so forth. Making sense? All right. Well, if you look at the gut, it's not very surprising that it has such a profound influence on your body. This is the gut. This is the place where the food kind of goes in and out. Did you know that the nerves associated with your gut is equal to the nerves in your spinal cord? When you think of nervous system, you automatically think brain and spinal cord, right? Well, did you know that there are the same amount of nerves, or very similar number of nerves associated with your gut as your spinal cord? And this is why scientists now they call your gut the second brain. Did you know this? They call your gut the second brain. Did you know 2/3 of your immune system is located in your gut? Did you know this? This is why when people have autoimmune conditions like thyroid disease or eczema, you can't just think about the skin, think about the thyroid. You have to also fix the gut, exactly, because the immune system in the gut is going to prime all the rest of the immune system. Did you know the surface area of your gut is 100 times larger than the surface area of your skin. Did you know this? That's right. The surface area of your gut is 100 times larger than that of your skin. And I want to share with you an illustration to prove a point. And this is not a perfect illustration, but I hope that you will get the point. Do you all know what this is? You know, when your sink is clogged, you declog it, right, using this thing. If I were to tell you, hey, I want you to rub this on your skin 3 times a day. Any takers? No, you don't want anything corrosive to go on your skin. Is this true? All right. What if I were to tell you, okay, maybe something not as toxic, but maybe something less toxic, I want you to rub this on your skin 3 times a day for 20 minutes. Any takers? No, because you don't care if it takes 2 minutes or 10 days or even a few years. You don't want anything to damage your skin. Is this true? Well, you know what the thing is? North Americans, many millions and millions of North Americans, 3 times a day, they're putting things into their gut, inflammatory compounds that is slowly but surely ruining their gut. You know, many of us, what we never do to our skin, we do to our gut every single day. Yes, and we're going to talk about that, okay? The gut is so important that Hippocrates, he said, all disease begins in the gut. And you know, it's maybe a little bit of overstatement, but it's definitely, there's some ring of truth to that. So I want to ask you, what is it about the gut that is so, that makes it so influential to the health? And science is showing that the gut microbiota that resides in the gut has profound influences on your health. How many of you have heard of the gut microbiota? Who here is hearing this for the very first time? Oh, really? Okay. This is cutting edge new science that's coming out. When I say the gut microbiota, what I mean is the bacteria, the fungi, and the viruses that are living within your digestive system. Okay? That is what I'm talking about, and that's what we're going to zone in on today. The gut microbiota. Scientists are demonstrating that these bacteria that are living within your gut has a huge influence on our health. And so what we do to these guys is going to affect our health in a profound way. And you'll see that there are some very simple dietary principles that we can follow that's going to maximize or optimize these guys here, which is then going to have a rebound, positive effect on your body. Did you know that you have 10 times more gut bacteria or microbes in your gut than all your eukaryotic cells in your whole body? There's more of them than there is your own cells. Did you know that the DNA, the genome of the gut bacteria is 100 times larger than our own human genome? Did you know this? These guys, you can see very quickly how these guys can profoundly influence our health. So what are these gut bacteria doing in our body, and why are they so important? Well, here you have the gut lining, and then you got bacteria. When you have a lot of good bacteria, they cover the lining of your gut so that it prevents bad bacteria from touching your digestive tract. Is it making sense? Right? So if you eat things and do things that is going to disrupt the good bacteria, then you're going to leave holes where bad bacteria and viruses and so forth can start lodging onto your digestive tract, and then you got all sorts of problems. Is it making sense? So you want to do things, you want to eat things and so forth to make sure that you have a lot of good bacteria covering your gut lining like this so that it's a protective barrier. Gut bacteria, they also form something called short-chain fatty acids, which lowers the pH. It makes it more acidic, which then leads to less pathogenic bacteria, which means less bad bacteria. So they make your digestive system a little bit more acidic so that it makes the environment really bad for these bad bacteria, and so which protects you in return. Also, did you know these bacteria, it's very interesting. This is your dendritic cells, and these are your immune cells. What these guys do, they poke out, as you can see here. So this is your digestive system right here, digestive lining. And these immune cells, they poke out, and they're kind of like sampling the stuff that's going on in your gut lining, okay, in your digestive tract. Well, did you know these gut bacteria here, they communicate with your immune cells. There's constant communication happening here, and then whatever happens, the interaction that happens here, then affects the rest of your immune system in the rest of your body. You understanding? Right? So you want to make sure that you got a lot of good bacteria so that it primes your immune system in the right way. If you got a lot of these negative bacteria or there's dysbiosis, then it's going to affect your immune system in a negative way. All right? All right. Did you know that scientists are finding a link between your brain and your gut? Scientists did a study, and this is a very classic study that they did in 2004, demonstrating that these gut bacteria doesn't only influence your immune system and doesn't only influence your gut, but they actually has an influence right up there in your brain. They got mice. They got germ-free mice, which means these mice have no bacteria, nowhere on their body, okay? At least in the digestive system. What they did was they put these mice in a very stressful situation. So they got these mice and they shoved them in this apparatus, which is as you can imagine, is very stressful for the mice, okay? And then they assessed their stress response. What they noticed was that the rats that had no bacteria in their digestive system had a higher stress response. But very interestingly, when they got gut bacteria and they put it back into the mice, guess what happened? It normalized their stress response. Are you following? So scientists realized there's something about these gut bacteria that even influences the way we deal with handle stress. Are you following? They did another study, and this is in 2016, so not too long ago. They got rats this time. And these poor things, they fed them 5 different antibiotics for like 10 days straight. How many of you would like that? And they did that in order to decimate the bacteria in the gut, okay? So they fed these guys 5 different antibiotics for multiple days straight to decimate or kill off all the bacteria in these rats. Then what they did was they got depressed human beings. Very interesting. They got these depressed human beings and they got fecal samples, basically poo samples, from these human beings, these people that were depressed. And the reason why they did that was because your feces or your poo has your bacteria from your gut, all right? And what they did was they put the feces back into the rats. Okay, so they colonized. I know it was really sad, but they colonized the rats with the bacteria from these depressed people, and they want to know how is that going to affect the body the influence the mind of these rats. And guess what they found? They found inflammation was higher when guts were colonized with bacteria from the depressed human beings. All right, you see that? The black lines represent the depressed mice or the depressed human beings and the influence that they had. So it's higher levels of inflammation. What they also found was that they noticed that the rats that had the bacteria from the depressed human beings, they were more nervous. And they demonstrated more anhedonia, as in they wouldn't seek pleasurable things anymore. And usually that's a sign of depression. If you're depressed, you either go extreme or you go really on the opposite direction. You just have no interest in anything pleasurable, right? And that's called an anhedonia. And what they found was that these mice were demonstrating symptoms of anhedonia. Okay, they weren't seeking out sugary stuff and sweet stuff as they normally would when they were colonized with the bacteria of depressed human beings. So can you see that these bacteria, these bacteria and these viruses and stuff, they have a powerful influence on your mind? Can you see this? All right. Why is that? How is that possible? Well, scientists are discovering that these gut bacteria, they communicate with the brain in various different ways. So for instance, remember I said the gut bacteria, they create these things called short-chain fatty acids. What these short-chain fatty acids do, they actually go and influence the inflammation in the brain. Did you know that these gut bacteria, they also create neurotransmitters? What are neurotransmitters? Yes, the molecules that help communication in your nervous system. Did you know that not only does your body create them, But your gut bacteria actually create these guys too. Did you know that? And they communicate, therefore they then go and influence the brain. And of course, the gut bacteria, as we said, they communicate with the immune system, which then can cause inflammation in the brain or tone it down. Okay? So if someone is depressed, if someone has anxiety and these types of things, can you only address the brain? No. You must also address and look at what is happening in their gut. This is why one of the things that when people come with depression and so forth, one of the first things we look at is their diet. Okay, because what happens with your diet is going to happen in your gut bacteria, which then is going to have an effect on your mind. Is this making sense? All right. So your gut bacteria influences our brain. All right. So we learn a few things. First, your gut health affects overall health. Amen? Gut bacteria affects gut health and therefore our health. All right. Gut microbiota, so the bacteria, can influence our immune system and either promote or tone down inflammation. Remember we said that the gut bacteria, they communicate with the immune cells. All right. And inflammation is the basis for almost all of our chronic diseases. Diabetes, hypertension, heart disease, even obesity. Subclinical low-grade inflammation is almost pretty much at the foundation of all these diseases. Right? And your gut bacteria can lower or increase the inflammation that's happening within your body depending on what you feed them. So, obviously the most important question then today is, what should I feed my microbes? Amen? Do you want to know? All right. Well, we don't need to guess. Scientists, they did a study. And they got two groups of people. They got one group from I believe the town was called Burkina Faso. And it was in a country in Africa. I forgot the country. Maybe some of you can locate. I don't know. It was a country in Africa. But these people, they weren't like city dwellers. They were actually more like hunter-gatherers. They lived very much like off the land and so forth. And interestingly, their diet was heavily plant-based. Okay, so they would eat like roots and stuff like that, and they would eat animal foods very, very rarely. Okay, maybe on special occasions and so forth. All right, so they got kids from this town. They compared that to a group of kids from Italy. Okay, and what were the Italian kids eating? Lots of cheese, higher refined foods, lots of animal foods, saturated fat, and so forth. And then they looked at the gut bacteria, and they compared the gut bacteria between these two groups, and guess what they found? First of all, the gut bacteria profile was quite different. Okay, this is the European kids, and this is the African kids. The European kids, their gut bacteria, the profile was very similar to someone who is obese. All right, whereas the African kids, they had a better profile, the gut bacteria. The level of short chain fatty acids, these are the good things that the gut bacteria produce. You want a lot of short chain fatty acids. It was higher in the African kids. Okay, you can see that, the dark lines, higher in the African kids. However, the number of bad bacteria, so you see these guys, Shigella, Salmonella, E. coli, these are not good, right? These are higher in the European kids. All right? Sorry? Okay. All right, so they noticed that these were different. And so why the difference? Well, the scientists, they say, our results allow us to hypothesize that a diet rich in plant polysaccharides and low in sugar and fat could select short-chain fatty acid-producing bacteria. You want a lot of short-chain fatty acid-producing bacteria. Well, how do you get that? A diet rich in plant polysaccharides. Pretty much a diet that's high in plant foods, low in sugar and fat. Is it making sense? All right. They continue, these scientists. We can hypothesize that the reduction in richness we observe in European compared with Burkina Faso, these are African children, could indicate how the consumption of sugar, animal fat, and calorie-dense foods in industrialized countries is rapidly limiting the adaptive potential of the microbiota. This is not good. Basically, they're saying consumption of sugar, animal fat, calorie-dense foods. This means foods that are very, very high in calories in industrialized countries. A diet that looks like this leads to bad, less adaptive bacteria. Are you seeing kind of the common pattern here? All right, Western diet is not conducive to a good bacteria. However, traditional diets that are low in animal foods, high in plant foods is what you're looking for. All right, so fiber is crucial for gut health. Okay, plant foods are high in fiber. All right, and what are some foods that are high in fiber do you know of? Whole wheat, all right, what else? Carrots, sure, what else? Oats, yes. Pretty much fruits, beans, whole vegetables, nuts, and whole grains. Pretty much a whole foods, plant-based diet is going to give you a lot of fiber, which is then going to feed your bacteria, which is going to promote healthy bacteria. Are you following? All right, whole plant-based foods, fruits, beans, especially beans, vegetables, nuts, and whole grains, none of this white bread and stuff like that. All right? Fiber, when it goes into your body, is not digested in your stomach, is not digested in your small intestine. However, it goes into your large intestine. And there, the bacteria in your large intestine, they metabolize fiber and they create these guys, short-chain fatty acids. And what these guys do, they feed the good bacteria and then they have positive effects on your gut lining. So they help the integrity of the gut lining. They also help communicate in communication with your brain. They also have anti-inflammatory effects and so forth. So you want a diet that's very, very high in fiber. On the other hand, animal foods, chicken, fish, meat, cheese, milk, all this kind of stuff, and even white bread and things like that. How much fiber is in these foods? It's not 1, 2, 3, it's 0. Absolutely 0. You eat animal foods, 0. No fiber. All right? Sometimes they try to do stuff with the food, with other plant foods, but really, if you're eating this kind of stuff, 0 fiber. All right? Whole plant foods, let's go back here. Okay, never mind. Okay, so whole plant foods is going to give you the fiber you need. How much fiber do you need? 30 to 40 grams per day. Do you know how much the average North American gets? No, not 0. We're not that bad. Yeah. It's like 15 grams, something around there. So we're not like, some of us are not even half of the amount of fiber that we need, right? And then you can see why we have so much autoimmune diseases, so much mood problems, digestive problems, and so forth, all right? Because we're so low on fiber. We're not eating the right foods to feed our bacteria, all right? And I want to just do some visual illustration to demonstrate the point, all right? You have Silver Hills whole wheat bread. That's going to give you 5 grams of fiber. You have 2 of these. That's going to give you 10 grams of fiber. Just by eating 2 of these bread, you're already 25% there of your fiber intake, all right? However, you eat a bunch of steak. How much fiber do you get? Absolutely 0. All right? So you can see when a North American sits down and has their breakfast, and the main thing that they're eating is bacon and eggs, 0 fiber. You sit down for dinner, and the main thing that's before you is that steak. How much fiber? 0 in that steak. All right. Look at this. Beans. If you're serious about fiber, you're going to be serious about beans, okay? Beans are really good. 1 cup of black beans, 15 grams. You're pretty much halfway there just by eating 1 cup of black beans, all right? How about chicken? How much fiber? Absolutely nothing, all right? This is a breakfast that I had one day, all right? So this is breakfast. So you can see there's like a bowl of mixed fruit. You got whole wheat bread. I have peanut butter on that bread, and then I have some bananas, right? Then you got a typical Western breakfast, all right? You got bacon and eggs, and then I added fruit just to try to compete with this, okay? So I just added this here, I put it into here, all right? The calories are exactly or pretty much the same, 900 calories in both of these, all right? But look at the fiber content. 20 grams of fiber in this. You're pretty much halfway there just by eating this meal. So I got half my fiber intake just by eating this simple breakfast here. You sit down to eat this breakfast, what do you get? 7 grams of fiber. And where do you think those 7 grams came from? The fruit. Okay, the fruit that I put here just to try to even out the competition. All right? So you can see here very quickly, the more animal foods you have in your diet, the more difficult it is for you to start to get your fiber, and then your gut bacteria is going to suffer for that, and as a result, it's going to affect your body as well. Is this making sense? You stick with plant foods, whole plant foods, okay? Non-processed, whole plant foods, and your fiber is going to be doing just fine. I could just have one more meal of vegetables and brown rice and tofu and stuff like that, and I'm pretty much there for the day. If you eat like this, you can eat 3 of these and you're still not there. All right? So we have to be very, very careful what we eat. And just for fun, this whole McDonald's meal can't even compete with this 1 cup of black beans. All right? So fast food is definitely not the way to go. All right. Now, it's not just that animal foods does nothing, contributes nothing to your gut health. They find scientists find that beef and things like that actually has a negative effect on your gut health. All right. So, for instance, beef creates sulfide-producing, feeds sulfide-producing bacteria, or helps breed these guys, and these things have a toxic effect on your colon. No wonder that eating high animal foods is linked with things like colon cancer. Okay, because you're breeding bacteria that you don't want there, which has a toxic effect on your colon. Colon means large intestine. All right? So colon cancer is highly influenced by the type of diet you eat, particularly a high animal food diet, in this case, beef. All right? Comparing plant protein and animal protein. Plant protein feeds good bacteria, lots of short-chain fatty acids. It helps increase or improve gut barrier, regulates the immune system, brings down inflammation. You see that? Lower inflammation. That's a good thing. Animal protein lowers short-chain fatty acids, which leads to irritable bowel disease, cardiovascular disease. In fact, look at this. Animal foods contains things like lecithin, choline, and so forth. When it goes into your gut, these bacteria, they start metabolizing these proteins, these components here. They create something called trimethylamines, which then goes to your liver, and the liver metabolizes these guys into something called trimethylamine N oxides, TMAOs. And guess what? These things, they help accelerate atherosclerosis. Atherosclerosis is the clogging of your arteries. So, everyone's like, you eat high-fat foods and so forth, and that's going to cause heart disease because it causes clogging of your arteries. Well, scientists discovering what's the medium? Possibly these gut bacteria are the medium for that. Okay, they're metabolizing the things in your animal foods, which then creates compounds which accelerates the clogging of your arteries. All right? So this is no joke. Protein metabolism, however, is not as favorable to the host as carbohydrate metabolism. Some of the end products of amino acid metabolism may be deleterious to the host. What's it saying? If you compare carbohydrates to proteins, what's better? Carbohydrates, all right? This is why I have an issue with the rave these days with ketogenic diet. How many of you have heard of ketogenic diet? Low carb diet. People go on these low carb diets, and then what they do is to compensate for the low carb, they eat high protein. And what's their source of protein? Animal foods. Well, animal food is not as favorable for your gut bacteria to metabolize as carbohydrate metabolism, and that is the issue. Unlike carbohydrates, fermentation of protein sources by the microbiota or the gut produces a much greater diversity of gases and metabolites, and increasing the nitrogenous substrate for the microbiota can also increase what? Putrefaction. This is pretty much what it means is rotting. Fermentation products. So you have too much protein, right? It doesn't matter if it's from plants or if it's from meat, animal foods. Just too much protein can have an influence on gut bacteria, which then leads to rotting in your colon. This is why when people say low carb, high protein, this makes absolutely no sense. All right? Continuing on here. All right. How about fat? Unsaturated fat. Lots of these unsaturated fat you get from plant foods. They're actually very good. They inhibit fat inflammation in your fat cells. They inhibit the deposition of bad cholesterol. On the other hand, saturated fat, bad fat, right? Lots of these fats come from things like coconut and butter and things like that, but also from animal foods. These things increase inflammation in your fat cells, not good, all right? And they inhibit insulin sensitivity. This is why things like high-fat diets could be linked with things like diabetes, all right? So even your fat content. And where do you get, let's see. And where do you get saturated fat in your diet? Do you know? High processed oily foods, things like French fries and animal foods. Okay, these lots of stuff in the Western diet is a high source of saturated fat, which leads to low-grade chronic inflammation. All right, it's going to derange your gut bacteria as well. All right, so very simple principle: whole foods, plant-based foods are the optimal diet for your gut bacteria. Is it making sense? Okay. What do I mean by whole foods? What I mean is foods that you get from the grocery store and you cook yourself. So we're not talking about prepackaged, sugar-laden oatmeal, or instant rice, or instant noodles. These are vegetarian, but they're not whole foods. Amen? All right. So we want to get raw ingredients ourselves and transform them into food ourselves. That's what we mean by whole foods. Plant-based foods, obviously, we're talking about vegetarian foods from plants. Okay, are the optimal diet for your microbiome. Why? Because they're high in fiber. All right? Did that make sense? All right, so, the plant-based diet, the vegetarian diet, and I would say a vegan diet has such a profound influence on many aspects of your health. It lowers the risk of diabetes, heart disease. People that are usually plant-based have lower weight and so forth, all right? So there's so many benefits. However, scientists are now discovering not only those benefits, but also it benefits your gut bacteria because it benefits your gut by having a positive influence on the bacteria in your gut. Making sense? All right. If you want to learn more about this stuff, you can read some books. The Good Gut by Dr. Sonnenberg, The Mind-Gut Connection by Dr. Mayer, and there's a good book called The Clean Gut, and they talk about a lot of these things, and they use terminology where the layperson can understand. So I want to highly recommend that you read these types of books. They talk about the very same things that I talk about, and they'll encourage you to eat more high fiber foods. They help you appreciate how much what happens in here is going to affect the rest of your body. Any questions? Yes, ma'am. Sorry? Baked fries, yeah. Yes. Yeah, so the question was, how about baking your fries instead of deep frying? And is that still harmful? My understanding is that baking is better than frying. So that would be highly more preferable for sure, yeah. Yes, ma'am.
It's on?
Colonoscopy or ultrasound? Antibiotics? the bacteria. Yeah.
Does it take to build that back up?
Yeah, so that's an excellent question. So the question was, you have a cold, and then the doctor's going to give you antimicrobials, which is going to affect your gut bacteria. It's going to kill off some of the good bacteria. And the question is, how long does it take to replenish all that? The answer is I'm not sure. But one good thing that you can do if you're taking antimicrobials is to take probiotics. When you take the antimicrobials, the antibiotics, that'll help make sure that you're keeping a good number of bacteria in your gut. But how long exactly is it going to take to replenish? I'm not too sure on that. Yeah, sorry. Yeah. Any other questions? Yes, ma'am. Sorry, I'll go.
Everything, and it metabolizes differently than other saturated fats. So I was wondering if you could comment on the healthiness of coconut oil.
Yeah, so that's an excellent question. So coconut oil, as our sister said here, is kind of the rave these days. Coconut oil replaces everything. Don't put too much emphasis on the picture. I copy and pasted the picture from the study that I was reading. So don't put too much emphasis on that. I'm not against coconut oil. I think still there's some people in the medical community today that are saying saturated fat, it doesn't matter anymore. You can take as much of it as you want. I don't think that really makes much sense. So I think moderation is called for. But I'm not necessarily against coconut oil itself. So I think in moderation, I think is okay. Yeah. Ellen White, she says to use oil judiciously and so forth. So I think in moderation is okay. But this idea that saturated fat doesn't matter anymore, that stuff, in my humble opinion, I think that's bogus. Yeah. But don't put too much emphasis on the picture. That was just copy and paste from the research study that I was reading for that. Yeah. Any other questions? Oh, you had a question, right? Oh, the coconut, yes. Okay. Yes, ma'am. Yes.
The probiotics that people should take, if you need to do that regularly, or if your diet's not perfect, which I don't know if we all have perfect diets, should that be something that we supplement with? And if so, what would you suggest?
Right. So you're saying that the diet is good or bad?
Hopefully all of us are striving towards an optimum diet, but on our way there, what should we do to supplement the bacteria in our bodies? Right.
So the question was about probiotics, whether you should keep on taking them or not. My opinion is no. I think it's more important to take prebiotics. So you probably heard of prebiotics, and for those of you in the audience, prebiotics are stuff that feed the bacteria. Probiotics are bacteria that are coming capsules, and you kind of take it and you're putting good bacteria in your gut. I'm more in favor of prebiotics, and of course you get prebiotics from whole plant-based foods, right? I believe that probiotics are very useful for medical conditions. Stuff, for instance, like what the sister mentioned about antimicrobials and so forth, and you take it for like a few months or so forth. But I think I always tell my patient the idea is to wean off them. Right? For me, my position is no supplements, absolutely no supplements, except for maybe vitamin D, B12, and stuff like that, right? As long as your diet is good. So I encourage people to be on a good diet, on a whole foods plant-based diet that's high in fiber. If they have to take probiotics, maybe 50 billion, 20 billion, and so forth, for a little while, I'm okay with that. But obviously, the idea is not to keep on popping capsules and pills for whatever, forever. Yeah. I believe you don't need these things, Look at our ancestors. They're eating whole foods, plant-based diet, most of them. And their meat wasn't as common as we think it was. Right? And they weren't popping capsules, right? They're doing quite well. So, yes, ma'am.
If you are a depressed person, say you suffer from depression, like chronic depression, and you have a change of diet, like you eat more whole foods, plant-based foods, will that break down that depressive condition that you have? Would it improve your health to the point where you can possibly even be cured of it?
Yeah, that's a great question. You know, whole plant-based foods is a step, but you know, depression is very multifactorial. You know, there's so many different things that happen with depression, and you know, oftentimes with these medical conditions, you can just take the multiple different steps to help give yourself the best chance to reverse these chronic conditions. So I believe the whole plant-based foods is one of those steps. Can a whole plant-based food itself reverse depression? I'm a little bit doubtful. Maybe Dr. Saul back there can answer that. But I'm a little bit doubtful. But will it give you a chance? Will people feel much better? Absolutely, yeah. Along with exercise and so forth. There are good studies that talk about how exercise is almost as beneficial as the antidepressants and so forth. So is it going to reverse depression? Well, it depends on how the depression started and so forth, right? But definitely, is it going to help? I believe absolutely yes. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Any other questions?
Hi.
Yes, sir. Yeah.
Going back to the probiotics,
Sure.
most of the supplements you buy in the store say they're transient, so when you stop taking them, the effect just wears off. So my question is, if you take multiple course antibiotics over your life, then the supplements you take in the store, they don't resupply your gut bacteria that you were born with. So then does your body naturally, when you eat the plant-based foods, kind of restore that fundamental gut bacteria that you're born with, or you get through the birth canal, that kind of thing?
That's right. Yeah. So you brought up a good point. The birth canal. You know, as you all know, babies are when they're in the mommy's womb, they're completely bacteria free. They have no bacteria. But then as they're coming out, they get pretty much a face plant of mom's bacteria, and that's why actually vaginal birth is very important. But the question was, you know, what if someone's taking multiple courses of antimicrobials, antibiotics, and the gut bacteria is really deranged, but probiotics are only transient, right? Their effects are only short term. And so is it possible to replenish the gut bacteria? I believe that the gut bacteria does replenish itself. Can you get to a point where you're completely as if you never had to go through these antimicrobial treatments? I'm not sure. But the gut bacteria can definitely replenish itself, and a whole foods plant-based diet that's high in fiber is definitely the way to go. Yeah, are you going to be at 100% as if you've never gone through that? Maybe not, right? But can you give yourself the best chance by changing your diet? I think absolutely yes. Yeah. But I think the brother brought up a really good point. Probiotics are definitely, their effects are transient, right? This is why when you depend on your only probiotics, if you're not going to change your diet and just say, I'm going to take in probiotics, this is absolutely a fallacy. This is false, okay? So you want to be changing your diet because the effects of probiotics are transient, as the brother accurately stated. Yes.
Okay, you mentioned the prebiotics. So where do I get, apart from the plant-based foods, say you just went through like antibiotics, how do I get like a dose of prebiotics in my system?
Yes, that's a great question. So, you know, the question was, you're taking antimicrobials, how to get prebiotics? Because I had said that prebiotics are better than probiotics. I still recommend taking probiotics in that case. If you're doing antimicrobial treatment, I think probiotics are good. You can also get prebiotic supplements. If you go to supplement store, they'll usually say prebiotics. And they'll contain things like psyllium, husk, and things like that. So you can get supplements that have prebiotics. However, I think still the best way to get prebiotics is through plant-based foods. So
Thank you.
Yeah, so you can hit it at multiple ways. Probiotics, prebiotic supplements, and definitely changing your diet to a high fiber diet. Yes. Okay, so I don't want to go over our time, so how much time do we have? Should we stop? So, last question? Okay. Last question? All right. Oh, lots of time. Oh. Okay. Well, if there's no questions, we can close it. Yeah. Okay, so, you know, I'll be here for a little bit, so if you want to come up and ask questions after, you're definitely free to do that. But yeah, you know, so in summary, the gut bacteria is extremely important. Before, in the early 2000s, there was only a few studies that were coming out, but now, every day, every year, there's multiple studies, hundreds of studies that are coming out. Scientists are discovering more and more things. But we as Seventh-day Adventists, we've known the secret all along. A whole plant-based food. Right? They've spent millions and millions of dollars to discover what we've known for years. Right? So, but the sad thing is that many Adventists don't practice what we know. And so I want to encourage you, maybe this is an angle that you never heard from about the whole bacteria, and which again reinforces our health message. I want to encourage all of you to really transition towards a whole plant-based food diet, and you reap the benefits. Amen. All right.